إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, continuing the theme of a da'wah ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a da'wah lil Quran, wa da'wah al anbiya. That has been the main three themes in the previous surahs, where we look at Surah Nuh, and likewise inside Surah Al-Muzzammil that we find the main Surah Al-Jinn as well previously. That the main theme of these three surahs is about the role of the prophets, the role of the Quran, or the impact of the Quran, and the impact of giving da'wah inside society. As we enter into Surah Al-Muzzammil, which is specifically speaking about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But these same three themes exist inside this surah, as if the extraction of the hidden element inside this surah is that before we begin to preach to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we begin to give da'wah to people, or da'wah to the Quran, there's a core element that some of us or many of us fail to understand, is the concept of spirituality. Because in this surah it speaks about the build-up of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Ya ayyuhal muzammil, qum al-layla illa qalila. Or one who's been wrapped up in the garments. Qum al-layla illa qalila. An ishara that before we begin to give da'wah or exert our efforts towards people and society around us, first we need to focus upon ourselves, because it's a strange world that we live in. Because even in the science of talabatul ilm that we find, the science of gaining Islamic knowledge, the intent of many people is something else. And as we find that people begin to topple later on inside their lives, hatta you find even some people have become atheists inside their belief, who may be even involved in Islamic activities or giving da'wah to people. Because the focus is upon other individuals, is about society without focusing upon, firstly, primarily upon oneself, strengthening one's own iman and one's belief that we find. So there's no point calling to people, giving da'wah to people, or giving da'wah to the Quran, when many of us don't even understand the Quran or liaise with the Quran. The Quran here says, وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. That's why sometimes many of us are taken aback, even some basic non-Muslims ask questions about the Quran. We don't understand certain aspects of the Quran. Or we haven't exerted our efforts about the Quran, about a journey with the Quran. It's about learning how to counteract people's arguments, how to refute people, how to look down upon people. That's what most of us, our theme and our life is about. That's what we focus upon. So we miss a core element of Islam. The core element, the hidden message inside this surah, if not the hidden message throughout the Quran, is one of spirituality, one of tazkiyah, one of focus, one of devotion, one of commitment. Not that the key element becomes, I need to become, as we find the YouTubers around us, I call Islamic YouTubers, that's what they are. Shallow individuals, thalatatu shuhur, 6 months, maybe even 3 years maximum, reading certain texts on the source, and they have the audacity to challenge people who've been reading for 30 years of their life, 40 years of their life, 50 years of their life. Not to say a person can't make mistakes, it's plausible. But logically as well, think about a person who's involved in, maybe, let's say, in the modern world, in structure, building of structures. You may have mastered one element of plastering a building, but you don't understand nothing else about the structure of a building. That's the only thing that you know. So you begin to boast and look at me, I'm a good plasterer, but you don't know nothing about bricklaying or electrical work or insulation. You don't know anything else about that. But you have the audacity to say to a person who spent their whole life doing that this person doesn't know this. Maybe they don't know that small element, but you can't take away the credentials of who they are. And this is the reason why, because we're focused, maybe we're to blame as teachers, that we're just teaching people that go out after people. Go and find mistakes of people. Go and worry about mistakes of people. If you see somebody doing something that's what you're not doing, you need to highlight that. You need to flag that. You need to highlight it inside society. It's our own fault personally. That's what we become. Rather than focusing on what we should focus on the core element of the Prophet ﷺ. The Quran told him to do قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And this is al-fi'l, al-amr, a commandment. That's why ulama said that the night prayer for the Prophet ﷺ was something obligatory. For us, as we find the end of surah, becomes a choice. But for the Prophet ﷺ, it becomes obligatory. So the minimum that we should be doing is the prayers. How many times have you seen that people are giving da'wah inside the park, hasten to pray their prayers, get back to da'wah, get back to this? Maybe once in a while you may need to hasten yourself. But is that every single day of your life? The salah is hastened. And then you're speaking about Islam, you're speaking about as-salah. غير معقول. It doesn't make sense that you're speaking to other people about Islam, but core fundamental issues within yourself, you don't hold fast to them. And actually inside this surah, look how many times Allah subhanahu makes his inferences about as-salah. قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِنَّ نَاشِئَةَ اللَّيْلِ هِيَ أَشَدُّ وَطْأً وَأَقْوَمُ قِيلًا وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. So Allah mentions these 3 times and more than that. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ تَقُومُ أَدْنَى تَقُومُ بِأَيِّ شَيْءٍ تَقُومُ بِالصَّلَاةِ. So here inside the surah, Allah is highlighting many times the concept of salah. For what reason? Actually in the Quran, Allah mentions some 85 odd times inside the Quran, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. For what reason? Why does Allah begin the Quran mentioning وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. Seek isti'ana bis-sabri was-salah. Seek aid and assistance via patience and as-salah. وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. It's going to be something burdensome, difficult for whom? For the average people, except for إِلَّا الْخَاشِعِينَ, those who know that their key element, their key rab, their key relationship between themselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-salah. أول شيء ما يحاسب على العبد يوم القيامة. The first thing we're all going to be asked about on the day of judgment. The first thing. Every single one of us. Not asked about somebody else. In the Mu'jam Imam Tabaarak, that find first thing every single one of us we ask about is as-salah. Is the prayer. And if that is to some degree rectified, or a person has made that effort inside their life, tried their best, supplemented that with what? With nawafil, with sunan. How many times people just engage, finish their salah? It's an aib upon us. Because people are true in what they're saying. You pray no sunnah, you pray no nawafil, you pray no rawatib, you pray nothing. Because as soon as you finish the prayer, people will stand outside for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours talking on a daily basis. And then you want to pick bones with other people, how they offer their prayer. Maybe at least they're offering their sunnah, they're offering their rawatib, at least they're offering their 12 sunnah of the prayer in a day and solidifying their house in paradise. They've got the yaqeen, haven't they? They've got the certainty that I want that house in paradise. I want to strengthen it. I want to build it even more. These are core things that we should be focusing inside the life. And likewise, find qira'atul Quran. You know, some of us, we can barely read the Quran at times. Barely you can read the Quran after 10 years of so-called practicing Islam. We can't read the Quran. Aibun. We're not asking people to become proficient readers of the Quran. That's a ni'mah min Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at least be able to read the Quran and relate yourself to the Quran, understand the Quran. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Recite the Quran with tartil. Recite it with understanding, pondering. Have your wird, have your daily reading the Quran through every single day of your life. Set yourself a target, half a juz. وَحَتَّى صَفْحَ وَاحِدَةً, even one page. Even one page every day, wake up in the morning or in the evening or ba'd al-asr or whatever suits you. Read that on a daily, regular basis. That this is your bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise you find as-sabr. Key element. وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَاهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. These are all elements of tazkiyah inside this surah. وَاصْبِرْ, as-sabr. As you mentioned in the da'wah of Nuh alayhi salam. Patience in his life. The patience of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam. وَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Be patient like these strong, resolute individuals. Is that not tazkiyah? Once again, hastiness that we have inside our society. We don't want to follow this long, tedious, proper path of Islam. Of 5 daily prayers inside our life. Of patience, reading the Quran, studying the Quran, implementing the Quran. And likewise you find a dhikr. وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. Make dhikr of Allah. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the end of surah, seek forgiveness. وَاسْتَغْفِرُ Inna Allah ghafur rahim. Seek the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these 5 or 6 elements are what tazkiyah. purification, before we start jumping to other things inside society, which we're all prone to do, which we love to do actually, because it's very easy to go and to preach to other people and tell other people. It's very hard to work upon one nafs, one soul. That's what ulama said, that the nafs, the soul, is a continuous battle. One day for the soul, one day for you, one day for the nafs, one day for you, one day for the ego, one day for pride, one day for sincerity, one day for hardship, one day for sadness, one day for weakness. That's why the nafs is always struggling. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Surah Al-Shams took some 11 or 12 oaths took. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا took an oath by the sun and the coming of the daylight. All these 11 or 12 oaths that Allah mentions. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Then Allah mentioned successful is the one قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا, who's purified it. الضَّمِيرُ هُنَا يَعُودُ إِلَى أَيِّ شَيْءٍ. Who purified what? What is this thing that Allah speaks about you have to purify inside your life? An-nafs. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Wretched is the one who pays no attention to his soul. You are a man via your soul. You're not a man via your bodily structure. You're a man via your soul that exists within you. That's what makes you a man. That the more the soul is good, that's why some ulama tell you, right, the soul is like a wild beast. It runs, hurdles, runs towards passions, desires, temptations, the world, the dunya, wealth, property, runs towards that. So the soul needs to be tamed. It's a wild beast. Whoever tames their soul has controlled the rest of their body, rest of their organs. Whoever tames their heart, focuses upon their heart. There's Allah mentioned throughout the Quran about the qalb, the heart being pure. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, comes with a pure heart. In a hadith as well that you find, أَلَا إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةٍ, inside the body is a piece of flesh. In the body is a piece of flesh, one piece of flesh. If that's rectified, the whole of your body is rectified. What is that small piece of flesh? أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبِ, it's the heart. That's it. Spend your life focusing upon your heart. Focus upon that. The rest is trivial. The rest is, look at the Prophet, look throughout his life, look at his devotion, his commitment, even Surah Al-Muzzammil. Read the revelation, whether it be the second or the third or one of the first 4 surahs that we find. Read the build-up of this surah. Read the beginning of Revelation, Sahih Bukhari, that we find how revelation came to the Prophet, how revelation used to come to him. And he went back to his wife Khadija, radiallahu anha, and what did he say to her? Zammiluni, zammiluni. Wrap me up, wrap me up. In other words, فَدَّثِّرُونِ, that's why you find Imam Sa'di inside the Tafsir, he mentioned, لَا فَرْقْ between zammiluni wa dathiruni. Not much fun. Both of these words are intertwining words, that they are. But he wrapped himself in a garment because he feared. He didn't know what was taking place, his revelation was coming upon him. And Allah then said to him, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, because look at the seerah, he was searching for peace, tranquility. كَانَ يَتَحَنَّث. And no one min al-ibadah used to go to Ghar Hira, used to go to cave of Hira and sit there for days on end, reflecting, searching for what? Searching for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. That's now cancelled. We don't need to go to Ghar Hira and enter into a cave or make a retreat to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was specific for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So Allah addressed him, Ya ayyuha al-Muzzammil, speaking to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. As we find that some of the ulama said, these are the titles of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. You know, inside the Quran, Allah uses certain khitabat, certain speeches. When He speaks, Ya Ibrahim, Ya Musa, Ya Yahya, Ya Dawood. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks directly, uses their name. But the Prophet alayhi salam never uses his name directly. Allah never used the name directly, إلا في سياق الماضي, except for speaking about the third person, the past tense. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ. Who is Muhammad except for a messenger existed before you? Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, speaking about him. Whenever the Quran, when Allah speaks directly to the messenger, Ya ayyuha Rasul, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. Look at the khitab of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyuha Rasul, Ya messenger. Ya ayyuha Nabi, qul li azwajik. O Prophet, say to your wives. These are khitabat, how Allah addresses the Prophet ﷺ, shows his maqam. That's we find in a hadith that we find inside Sahih Imam Muslim, or mistaken. He said, Ana Muhammadun wa Ahmadun. I'm Muhammad and I'm Ahmad. Wa ana al-Mahi.
يمحو به الكفر. I'm the one who obliterates, who wipes out kufr. وأنا الحاشر. I'm the one that people gather around. The one people gather حول قدمي. Will gather around my feet, gather around me, cluster around me. وأنا العاقب. And I'm the end, the seal of the prophets. صلى الله عليه وسلم. النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم. Surah Al-Ahzab. Look how many times Allah speaks about the Prophet ﷺ. Surah Al-Ahzab speaks about the Confederates, speaking about jihad, speaking about struggle. But the reality of Surah is all about the Prophet ﷺ. It's all praising him. And that's why some of the ulama, you can see how they began to extract. Some go to the view that he had 99 different names. You know, either qawl da'if, this is just mubalagha, excessive names that people have added to the Prophet ﷺ. But you can see where their love comes from. You can see where it spills from the Quran and the Hadith, about certain titles which are given to him. How does the Quran describe the Prophet? Look at the end of Surah Al-Tawbah. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. End of Surah Al-Tawbah. Indeed, there's come upon you a messenger. It grieves a messenger from amongst your own self. It upsets him. You don't come towards the guidance. It worries him. It troubles him. And he's Ra'uf, he's Rahim, pitiful, merciful, kind, compassionate. Allah uses these titles for the Prophet ﷺ. And the disciple read inside the Ulum al-Quran about the collection of this verse. How this verse was put together, compilation of the Quran, is a marvel in itself of how the Prophet ﷺ described this one individual who's carrying this one verse. But that's a different discussion. يَا أَيُّهَا الْمُزَّمِّلْ قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Stand up in prayer, part of the night, half of the night, or increase upon that. And even inside the surah, how many times the night is mentioned? Because night is a time for obedience, of ta'ah. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ. When you finish your daily chores, your work, your career, then find moments. Find moments to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially during the night, the final part of the night of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about those individuals who offer the night prayer. Even if it's 2 raka'at, ba'da salatul isha, as some ulama mentioned, just before you go to sleep, just to read that, you'll be written down amongst those individuals who observe the night prayer. تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمْعًا وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. They sacrifice their beds. They sacrifice their sleep. They sacrifice it to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why even the ayat we speak about إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Read the tafsir, these ayat. These were the Prophet read these ayat when you make qiyamul layl, make tahajjud. And when he read these ayat, he would weep of reflection. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. It doesn't have to be excessive reading the Quran, excessive prayers that people say, oh, read X hundred amount of raka'at in the night and barakah given to you. Simple. 2, 4, 6, 8, mathna wa mathna. Increase, decrease as much as you want. Maximum, as the ulama concluded, 11. 8 raka'at of the night prayer and 3 witr. And you want to condense that prayer, 1 witr if you want to condense it. But the Prophet remained constant. When he began to do something which is even supererogatory, he would remain observant of that. Even though he had all of the different tasks he had to do inside his life, he observed that throughout his life. وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدْ بِهِ نَافِلَةً. In the night, make nafilah, make the nawafil. عَسَى أَن يَبْعَثَكَ رَبُّكَ مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا. عَسَى هنا ليس بمعنى perhaps. حقا, and indeed Allah will raise your rank. مقاما محمودا أولا في الدنيا ورفعنا لك ذكرا ثم في الآخرة, and inside الآخرة. That's the Prophet ﷺ. That's the encouragement that we should find inside our lives, looking at the Prophet ﷺ. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Look at the recital of the Quran of the Prophet ﷺ. Many companions narrate, they said, we never heard the best of voices or the best of qira'ah was the qira'ah of the Prophet ﷺ. كَانَ يَقْرَأَ مَدًّا مَدًّا. He would elongate slightly at the end of each verse. He would stop at each verse appropriately. That was the Prophet ﷺ. Wouldn't hasten inside his qira'ah that many people may do, is hasten through their recitation. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. That's why people at ulama debate about calls it mujawwad, or reciting Quran in a beautiful tone and extending, elongatingly. There's a debate amongst fuqaha and ulama about that. But the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ was وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, to recite in a flowing manner. No need to excessively elongate certain things. It flows. That's more closer, aqrab ila sunnah of qira'at al-Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam that we find. And Imam Ibn Kathir inside his tafsir, before he begins his tafsir, he near enough has a whole chapter in his muqaddimah speak about fada'il al-Qur'an, about the virtues of the Qur'an. زَيِّنُوا أَصْوَاتَكُمْ بِالْقُرْآنِ. Try to exert your efforts, your voice in reciting the Qur'an. It's not just another book that you're reading, just mumbling away, murmuring away. You make that. That's why many times, you know, the awam, they're far better than us, that we may look down upon them. They have this deep reverence. This deep reverence for the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they have. The way they adorn it, the way they preserve it, and the way that they read it, because they believe passionately these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we take it as something light. He said to one of the companions, لَقَدْ أُوتِيتَ مِزْمَارٍ مِنْ مَزَامِيرِ آلِ دَاوُود. You've been given one of the flutes, a flute from amongst the flutes of the family of Dawood, because Dawood had a beautiful voice. Who was that companion? Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. You know what Abu Musa al-Ash'ari said? Because the Prophet walked past him and heard his qira'ah. He said, Ya Rasulullah. He said, oh Messenger of Allah, I knew that if you were standing outside, I would have beautified my voice even more. He's just reading. But if I knew you were standing outside there, I would have exerted my effort even more. Already the Prophet is praising him, that you be given such a beautiful voice of recital of the Quran. Focus the Quran, as we find out, there's certain people have a beautiful voice, and it's what's known as khushu fil Quran. A person can decipher, this person understands the words of the Quran. Because some person can just imitate a voice. And there's those who understand the words of Allah. That has a deeper penetration. لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يَتَغَنَّ بِالْقُرْآنِ. He's not from amongst us who just try to exert themselves in a recital of the Quran that we find. And maybe that could be hard for many of us in the world and society that we live in. But look at this encouragement. The one who recites the Quran, وَهُوَ مَاهِرٌ, he's an expert. He'll be with the lofty individuals. But that individual who struggles, who stutters, who breaks, who finds it hard to read the Quran, وَلَوْ أَجْرًا, will have two rewards. Who stutters to read the Quran, finds it hard, never learned it when they were young, tries to come back and learn the Quran at elderly age. Look at inspiration from the Prophet will have two rewards. Doesn't shun people away, doesn't push people away. He tries to encourage people. Read the Quran, study the Quran. Iqra, warqa. Read and ascend. وَإِنَّ مَنْزِلَتُكَ آخِرَ آيَةٍ كُنْتَ تَقْرَعَهَا فِي الدُّنْيَا أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Read and ascend. Wherever you stop reading will be your place in Jannah. Wherever you stop reading, that's your maqam, that's your position. You carry on ascending up in the heavens. Where some of our huffaz of the Quran are going towards the world of what do we find? An nasheed. I don't want to open this kind of box about an nasheed, or Islamic nasheed they call it. Even people memorize the Quran are going towards that path. Why are we going towards that path? Maybe some people say it's to give tranquility or ease or whatever maybe to society. You don't need anta sahib al-Quran. You're a person who's got the Quran inside your chest. What more do you want inside your life? What more attention do you want inside your life that we begin to divert towards that? That's why it shows that we don't understand the power of the Quran, the intent of the Quran. If we did that, we'd all be rushing towards that. That's what the struggle will be inside our dunya. That's what the companions know about who knows the most Quran. And how many of them knew the most Quran. And then that's why I had to go down another stage. Who's slightly older, who became Muslim before. Because everyone fulfilled the basic criteria. Most of them fulfilled that criteria. They were fulfilled the Quran, they knew the Quran inside out. So I had to go to the next level. So these are the things that we need to focus inside our life. إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. Now the Quran is thaqeel. Quran at the same time, وَلَقَدْ جَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Inside Surah Al-Qamar 54, chapter 4 times mentioned. It's easy to learn. So why does Allah say, إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا? We're going to put down upon you harsh words, severe words. Even we take that literally, physically. As we mentioned, read about Revelation, the Quran will come down in the Hadith in Bukhari, the Prophet, as we mentioned, it will come like the ringing of bells. It will be a strong sound. The moving of chains being dragged. It will come and be heavy on my mind. And likewise, he said that Allah take to be in a sifatul rajul, it come in a form of a man. Jibreel will come as a man and give him that revelation. And other occasions, the Quran would come. When I was taking Zayd bin Thabit was sitting, the Prophet, his blessed thigh was reclining on his thigh, sitting beside it, reclining his thigh, and revelation came. Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. He said my thigh was about to break. It was about to break because the power of the Quran. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل. We said that this Quran, the mountain will turn into dust. That's how strong the Quran was. Aisha, she narrates that the Quran would come down on a cold day. Pearls of sweat, droplets of sweat would come down from the brow, from the forehead of the Prophet ﷺ on a cold day. Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. Other ulama mentioned qawlan thaqila min bab al-ahkam wal-awamir wal-nawahi. Quran is serious business, obligations, rules, regulations. Quran, Islam isn't a joke for someone that we take it. As you mentioned, it isn't entertainment. Islam, Quran makes you men. That's what it does. That's what the Quran does. It makes men of people. Takes us what we were from shallow individuals and it makes great men, powerful men, strong personalities, strong individuals. That's what the Quran does to a person. That's what it trains a person to do. That's what gives them strength. It gives them power. Read through the companions. Not all of them were powerful, strong individuals, but what gave them the strength was the Quran. Quran lifted them to another spiritual dimension of carrying that Quran within them, understanding the Quran. That's what reading the Seerah amongst many of the ulama. Their life was about the Quran. Even hatta fi sijin, when they get placed inside prison, look at many of the ulama. They thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They thank the people who placed them in prison. They thank them and say, because why? It's a time for me to reflect and spend more devotion towards the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Read Rasail ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi min as-sijn. Read his letters from prison that he wrote. That people fluster around Sheikh ibn Taymiyyah. Far away people are from him. Alim, jahada bilisani wa biqalami wa bisayfihi. He's a scholar who fought with his pen, with his voice, with his tongue, with his sword. That's Sheikh ibn Taymiyyah. That's why he's been given that title. In all aspects, he's done that. That's when he's placed inside prison. What did he say? ماذا يفعل أعدائي بي أنا جنتي بستاني في صدري. What can my enemies ever do to me? What can they ever do to me? أنا جنتي بستاني في صدري. My garden and my paradise are right here inside my heart. وقد أول بمعنى القرآن. As long as the Quran remains inside my heart, there's nothing these people can ever do to me. And as we find some of his works at Tafsir, he wrote them with coal. When they took the coal away from him, then what happened? Allah lifted him, took him away. When they took the coal away from him and he was writing Tafsir, they took Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this time to leave now. You fulfill your purpose. Now they're not allowing you to carry on writing Tafsir, writing the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's time for you to leave this dunya and to return back. Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila. Inna nashi'at al-layli. The beauty of the night, the awakening of the night is the best time for you to focus towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna laka fi nahari sabhan tawila. In the day is a struggle that we find, that we will go through, that we need to overcome it. وَاذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا. Remember your Lord. وَتَبَتَّلْ إِلَيْهِ تَبْتِيلًا بِمَعنَى أَخْلِصْهُ لِلْعِبَادَةِ. That focus, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be focused in your ibadah towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we mentioned, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَى رَبِّكَ فَارْغَبْ. When you complete this word, focus towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? See, you know the Quran, many of us, we read these ayat, we don't see core elements. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want us to develop inside our life? Just have this tertiary reading. Allah says, Rabbul Mashriqi wal Maghrib. He is the Lord of the East and the West. لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا. You know, we just acknowledge rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. None has the right to be worshipped except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَاتَّخِذْهُ وَكِيلًا. Take him as your companion, one who takes care of your affairs, your protector. Where are we from that in the world today? Where are we from that? Where do we take it from a worldly perspective, in a political world of the Muslim world, right down to a minor level? Where are we from that? Where are we from these verses that we speak about Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Tawheed isn't just to know the sections of belief. Tawheed is to implement it inside your life, to become rasikh in your belief about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Allah mentions inside the beginning of Surah Al-An'am, speaking about those individuals, their characteristics, who read the Quran, who study the Quran, زادتهم إيمانا, increase of iman. What does then Allah mention? وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. Then they place their trust in Allah. It's not just a reading of the Quran. It's not a reading of Islam. It increases your reliance, your total dependence, your total commitment lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't find that in books. You won't find that in books. You can read as many books as you want inside your life. We don't need books. That's why inside Surah Al-Jinn, many ulama said, they just heard the Quran and look what happened to them. How they moved mountains. We're hearing the Quran for the last 1400 years. We're breaking mountains, we're collapsing mountains. We're collapsing the mountains of Makkah and all of its heritage and prestige and honor and dignity. That's what we're doing. That's what the world's become, is drifting away. Because we don't feel that our protector is Allah. We feel that we need to modernize ourselves with a modern world to be equivalent to them. That's power, that's glory, that's honor, that's dignity. That's a lack of Tawheed. That's what you call lack of Tawheed. Lack of a weakness of Iman. That to be like them will give us glory. To live their life will give us, reunite again Islam once again. That's a lack of Tawheed. A lack of conviction in the nusus of the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because if that was true, then the Prophet ﷺ had access to all of that in his life. And he could have done that. But he told us to remain in a certain aspect in our life and to be worried about certain things inside our life that we should focus on throughout our life. وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ. And then whatever people will say, whatever people do, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ. Be patient about that. Don't lose hope. Don't fear. Don't despair. Don't get engrossed in the people around you. قِيلَ وَقَالَ, that many of the youth are involved inside. Tit for tat. He said this, he said that. He done this video, I do this video. He says this, I say that. وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ. Be patient. It's manhajul Nabi alayhi salam. Be patient, just carry what you're doing. Why are we always so personal? We feel everything's personal. Something which is wrong, according to the Quran and Sunnah, anyone can correct anybody. Umar al-Khattab is giving khutbah. People said they don't want to listen to you and you don't clarify your state. Did he say to them, send them to the gallows? Did he punish them? Did he torture them? Did he say, don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I am standing in this mimbar? How dare you speak out in this manner? Is that what he done? Is that what our leaders are? Is that their characteristics? Is that their behavior? And prior to that, is that, look at the character of the Prophet, how many times people harmed him, oppressed him. But he's shown the finest of character behavior, never personal, inside his life that we find. Inna arsalna alaykum rasulan shahidan alaykum. Then Allah speaks after spirituality has been built up. Then the Quran says, then go out, like we sent to Fir'aun. We sent Musa to go and preach to him. We sent you, O Messenger, to go out and preach to the people. After all this long discussion about tazkiyah, about patience, about the Quran, about the night prayer, now's the time to go out and speak to the people. Not to take that in the beginning. That to learn one or two ayat, to read one or two books, get excited, go out and start preaching to the world. And after 6 months, you don't practice your deen at all. It's a common denominator at the moment inside our society. How many young youth have we seen? After 3 months, 6 months, that's it. Where are they there? Where before they have salah? Salah even becomes difficult for them. 5 daily prayers inside their life because focus is upon something else. وقولوا قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم ولجميع المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين
وأصلي وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Common theme inside the Quran we mentioned about spirituality and Yawm al-Qiyamah, returning to the last day. Hardly ever will you find this distinction or this separation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking about things of this dunya, even ahkam. You look at Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah speaks about rules and regulations. Allah will sway the discussion back towards the last day, about the hereafter, because that is the feeling that instills in the individual, that the things, the checking point inside their life. As-sama'u munfatirun bih, kana wa'duhu maf'ula. When the heavens will begin to rip apart, that is a reality, an action that's going to take place that Allah has destined. The day that you find that the young boy, يَجْعَلُ الْوِلْدَانُ شِيبًا, that a young boy, his hair will become grey, as the Quran here describes it, because of the coming of the last day, the worry of the last day. This is spirituality. That checking point daily inside our lives is about al-akhirah, is about the last day, about being worried about the last day. Allah warns us. Then again Allah ends the surah. إِنَّ رَبَّكَ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ تَقُومُ أَدْنَى مِنْ ثُلُثِ اللَّيْلِ وَنِصْفَهُ. Allah knows how much you stand at the night. As ulama said, this is the only surah that the end of the surah, it counts at the beginning of the surah. As some ulama said, the beginning is a Makkah and the end is a Medina surah. Now that prayer, because it would have been something difficult for the Muslims to pray every single night. So Allah just encourages us. Pray in half the night, a third of the night, a quarter of the night. Pray whatever you want. فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Read whatever you want from the Quran. Then again, Allah mentioned, فَقَرُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. Read whatever you want. Allah knows. عَلِمَ أَنْ سَيَكُونُ مِنْكُمْ مَرْضَى. Amongst you going to be the sick. Amongst you going to be travelers. Amongst you going to be striving and struggling the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَقَرُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. Read whatever you can of the Quran in your daily reading. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us inside the Quran. And then the surah then concludes after this discussion about the night prayer and praying. And then all that, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقْرِضُوا اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Establish the prayer, give the zakah, and give a goodly loan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah doesn't need our wealth. The wealth belongs to Allah. Allah wants to see what are you going to do with the wealth that bestow upon you. So tazkiyah is also not just the spiritual element of the bodily structure, tazkiyah of our man, of our wealth, of our amwal. We need to do that inside our lives. وَأَقْرِضُوا اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا وَمَا تُقَدِّمُوا لِأَنفُسِكُمْ مِنْ خَيْرٍ تَجِدُوهُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Whatever goodness that you send, it will be presented to you. It's all stored with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah never lets your iman go to waste. وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Then the end of the surah, make istighfar after the prayer. Why do you say astaghfirullah 3 times? Make istighfar throughout the day. That's what believers should be always making istighfar. The Prophet ﷺ في بعض الروايات 70 مرة حتى أكثر من 100 مرة, up to more than 100 times in a day. The Prophet ﷺ is making istighfar, astaghfirullah wa tubu ilayh. Is making istighfar, making tawbah, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him, to pardon him. We mentioned that in the previous surah about the fawaid, inside Surah Nuh, about the fawaid of making istighfar. So these are the aspects of tazkiyah that we need to develop inside our lives. Be focused upon them, because as they say, the world is savvy. As they say, people will come and take you away from the dhikr of Allah, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the morning, in the evening, reading the Quran, a telephone call here, a message here, a WhatsApp message there, a discussion here, this there, this program, this, that and the other. That's it. Your day's over, finished. Day's been wasted, another day gone by, that's it. Lost another day. That's what the ulama said, that death isn't something to be worried about. Death isn't something to be worried about. The death of time. When you squander your time, that's more dangerous. That's real death, when you're just wasting your time, just being idle in your time, not being constructive inside your time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and ability to remain close to the sunnah and the teachings of Prophet ﷺ, to follow his manhaj, his character, his behavior, how he lived on the face of this earth, and to rejoice and to be back with him inside the al-akhirah. Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala al-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. ربنا أفرغ علينا الصبر وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. قوموا لصلاتكم يرحمكم الله.